Hello, what's up everybody? We got free gear removal now in the game for a couple days until the 29th, if I'm not mistaken, but that's not what we are here to talk about. Today we're going to be reviewing some rare champions that are going to be a must consider upgrading for newer accounts. So let's get into it. Before we go any further, please go ahead and check out Aptoide if you haven't done so yet. It's going to be allowing you to get yourself massive amounts of bonuses whenever buying anything in Raid Shadow Legends through Aptoide. Right, so just as you are buying a pack normally and regularly, you're going to be able to get a massive bonus that can go from extra 10% of your amount of money you're spending all the way up to extra 35% of that much money. And the good thing about this whole thing is that once you have enough of the bonuses, you're going to be able to use them to make the payments for you instead of actually using your real money, right? So you are saving up in further purchases in the future. We'll talk more about this whole thing at the end of the video. For now, let's keep going. I'm going to start off easy and just mentioning the rare champions you will require for key fusions in the game, namely Mikage, which is of course the only free fusion there is for mythical champions. So any of these rares you might be getting along the way, do not sell them or just drop them anywhere. Just keep them, and eventually they're going to be massively useful. If you want to join my team in Raid Shadow Legends, click the link in the description to get a free Narma as well as Anax, Uugo, and Mausoleum Mage as you progress through the game. Here's what you need to do. First of all, log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall. Then click the link in the description and register a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial, and then go to your inbox and claim your first champ. Don't miss out on your chance to get a fresh start in Raid with a free Narma and 3 epic champs. Click on my link right now. Same goes for anything related to Relic Keeper. All these guys are going to be required to fulfill the missions towards getting the Arbiter, right? So no matter if you get any of these guys, even these ones down here, you can get them really easily from the campaign. Just keep them around, at least upgrading them eventually so that you can complete the fusion over here. For example, I could already go ahead and do that and fuse up my Justicar, which is going to be again a quest for the mission system for the Arbiter. Same goes for the Relic Keeper. They are a must to keep around, even though they're not going to be necessarily part of your team. At least just keep them around. And to start off with actual rare champions that you want to be using in your teams, we got Apothecary, one of the better rare champions there is out there. Look at his ratings, man. He is just top tier, especially in the Fire Knight Castle because of this triple attack. Triple attack at random when there is only one enemy, that is already a triple attack onto the boss, right? So you're getting through those shield stacks. He also does a little bit of healing, which can be a critical, and then he also increases speed of all allies, the strong version, as well as filling the turn meter. He is sort of like a Deacon Armstrong in some ways, but all in all, he's a very budget champion. Of course, a rare champion that's going to be a massive upgrade for your account. The aura, all in all, is not really the greatest, but he's an all-rounded great champion. We gotta mention El Hines. She's a free starter champion. She's gonna be bringing a lot of AoE damage to your team. Look at the reviews, man. She is great everywhere. A very easy campaign farmer to build. She's got a lot of AoE on her A2 here with a double hit here on the all enemies. Rather, it's a single target attack and then does an AoE hit. But anyway, she also does give an increased crit rate buff if she does actually kill the target. She brings a double AoE shot here with the A3 and a double single target shot if it's actually a critical hit. The first one it is. So she does have a lot of hits in her kit, which will be great in many situations. But overall, she's going to be doing a lot of AoE damage for you. You put her on a lifesteal set and she's going to be carrying you through the entire campaign farming really easily. Now, a fairly underrated champion, especially for the clan boss, is RARES. She does also have decent reviews everywhere, but most importantly onto the clan boss. Why is that? She's going to be doing quite some single target damage. Her A1 is nothing special because the clan boss is not really going to be dying, but she does bring an increased speed for all allies. That chance can go up all the way to 100, as well as removing random debuffs, which could potentially be the stun on the clan boss, right? So if the stun is applied, then she can remove it and you do not lose a turn on that champion. And she does also bring a counter attack, which does have a cooldown, so it cannot be an infinite spam of counter attacks, but she will be putting you out there on the damage. And she does also bring an ally speed increase, which is going to be quite valuable early game in particular. And if you do not have a reviver early game, Relic Pretender is going to be one of the better options, although she's of the Void Affinity and it's going to be a little bit harder to get access to her. She does have a revive on a rare champion with a little bit of turn meter filling, as well as applying some healing and cleansing all debuffs from all enemies, as well as a decreased attack a small version and with a lower chance, but she does bring quite some tools to the table. Now onto the Sacred Order faction. Chaplain is going to be a very accessible debuff cleanser, as you can see over here, as well as quite a big healer, because she's going to be doing healing based off of this champion's attack, as well as doing it over here with an AoE attack. 25% of all damage dealt is going to be healed to all allies. It's an AoE attack, so that's going to be great. Now onto the Barbarians. War Maiden is going to be giving you access to a big version of decreased defense on an AoE, which can go to 100% chance of being applied. She is nuts to enable a lot of damage in many avenues of the game. She's particularly highly useful in early arena, and then you also bring quite some single target damage to the double hit over here with the placing increased attack buff on this champion if she does a critical strike with the first hit, and then she will do another hit with that one, right? So she does bring a lot of single target, as well as enabling that decreased defense on everybody. Now Skirmisher is another rare champion that's very rarely used. As you can see over here, the reviews are like not there. They're like 12 reviews, 15 reviews, but she's actually quite useful in many avenues of the game. She does have a double hit over here with us, is going to be doing more damage to enemies with no active buffs, and you can believe that that's going to be quite happening quite often, particularly for example in like the Fire Knight. Then she's also going to be having a little bit of turn meter control, although it's going to be on a 3-turn cooldown, but at least you gotta be able to use her as like an turn meter controller before you have access to something else besides, of course, your Armigers and stuff. She can support the Armiger if you're doing something like Spider, and then you're going to be having an AoE attack removing random buffs from the enemy, which can very much be very useful early on. Onto the Ogrin tribes. Over here we have our boy, the Bellower. You gotta, of course, mention this guy. He's one of the best campaign farmers there is out there. Of course, a beast in faction wars as well as in the Spider's Den, because literally every single attack he does is going to be an AoE. He has a lot of debuffs as well, which he can be turning into the strong versions of themselves through a blessing, and therefore he can actually be a top tier champion in many avenues of the game. Anyways, he's gonna be bringing the block active skills on an AoE. Then he's also gonna be bringing the smaller version of decreased speed, which again, if you're going to be using a certain blessing, I think it's Nature's Force or Force of Nature, something like that, is going to be going to the 30% version, of has a chance at least of doing so. Then we also bring over here the decreased attack debuff as well as the decreased defense debuff, both on their weaker versions, but they have 100% chance of applying as well as on an AoE, and then you can turn them into the bigger versions with that blessing. Now I found it really hard to recommend any rare champions from the Lizardman faction, and one in particular did stand out to me, and that is the one that I don't have over here, or one of them at least, Slitherbrute, which does bring a lot to the table, a little bit of everything in fact. He does have very low reviews, at least like 12 reviews. You cannot see it because it's behind my camera, but they are all quite decent. Let's see what he does. Of course, he does have a strong version of the decreased speed debuff on his A1, which has a 50% chance of being applied once fully booked up, so that's already quite a decent addition to his kit. Then he does have a buff Steal, right? Attack one enemy and steal a random buff from them, which will be very useful, especially early on in some of the potion keeps, where getting through some of the buffs will be very hard initially if you don't have any buff cleanses or steals. And then he will also have a little bit of turn meter decreasing whenever he does attack an enemy, based off of the amount of buffs that they are going to be having. Now I'm not sure what the percentage of the turn meter steal, or rather decrease, is going to be, but if it's like 1% per buff, I mean, that would be very bad. But if it's like something like, I don't know, 5%, not really sure on the math over here, maybe I should have checked it out. Anyways, he does bring a lot to the table together with an ally accuracy buff, right? So he is quite decent in particular. Again, I would say maybe for the potion keeps and some of the early bossing, especially if you are having trouble with that random debuffs, or rather buffs on the enemies, really making your life pain. Now onto the skinwalkers, there is one that stands out a lot, and that is Gnarlhorn. Even though he's really only useful in one spot in particular, that is going to be the Phantom Shogun Grove. So eventually you will be getting to the point where you want to be farming this in high stages. And why is he actually good in there? Well, there's two reasons for it. First and foremost, he cannot be landing weak hits, even though it's also not possible for those hits on the A1 to be strong or critical. And weak hits, once you do get to the Phantom Shogun, you will realize they're going to be a little bit of an issue with his Mist, or yeah, I think it's a Mist skill. Anyways, he's got a passive word. There's going to be a lot of synergies where you do weak hits to the enemy, and that's going to be very detrimental to your success in the dungeon. So therefore, this alone is already going to be a blessing for yourself. Then he also brings a provoke as well as an increased defense, which is going to be allowing him to survive through a lot of the hits. He's going to be your tank, together with an unkillable buff that he's going to be bringing to himself on a pretty low cooldown and just a little bit of defense, which you will probably not be using, but he's going to be just fit for that job once you do get to it. I chose totally skipped the orcs and we're gonna be going straight to the demon spawn where we have a Fellhound. Now he's of course of the Void affinity, so a little bit harder to get, but he's actually the best campaign farmer there is in the game, as you can see right here, a 4.9. That is his only usefulness, but he's the fastest and most efficient champion to build up just for campaign farming. He's gonna be doing it in like 5 seconds. He's gonna be clearing stage 3, or rather like level 12, stage 3, whatever. He's gonna be doing it insanely fast, and that's mainly because of his A1, where he's going to be attacking all enemies with a decent chance of placing a decreased speed, which is whatever. Then he also has a heal and reflect damage, whatever. We don't really care much about that. And then he also has block damage, right? We only really care about his AoE attack on the A1, which is really just what he's going to be spamming, one-shotting the entirety of all the enemies. Since he's of the Void affinity, he's not going to be landing any weak hits, so there is no chance that you are just lacking a little bit of damage if your build is not insane. And he's also very easy to scale up because of that defense and attack. Onto the undead hordes, we have the Frozen Banshee, which is greatly useful in the Demon Lord as an early access poisoner. She's going to be able to apply those poisons as well as poison sensitivity, which, if you know, is going to be doing insane amounts of damage to the Demon Lord. I think it's like 50,000 damage per poison tick, right? So getting access to an early poisoner is going to be allowing yourself to just scale a lot higher in the Demon Lord progression. She also brings turn meter fill over here for each debuff on the target, meaning that she's going to be able to cycle through her turns a little bit easier and just get back to applying the poisons. And she once again applies the poison sensitivity over here on the A3, meaning that the boss is going to be taking more damage, and also coming with an accuracy buff on the aura, which is going to be all the easier to just gear her up so the poisons are landing a lot easier. My god, we have a lot to talk about here on the Dark Elves. First of all, we have Gale, probably the best starter champion, which is going to be giving you so many tools. I mean, he's also just like Elhain, she's great, rather he is great literally everywhere. He does bring a single target attack with a poison, which again is going to be very useful if you don't have a poisoner in your team, so just put him onto the Demon Lord and there goes that. He has an AoE attack with a chance of inflicting a critical hit, or rather an extra chance, and then filling the turn meter of the champion for each enemy killed, meaning that he's going to go back to back to back doing a lot of AoE attacks if he does actually clear the waves, right? He fills up his turn meter and he's just going to be nuts in doing AoE damage. Then he has again another chance of applying a poison over here, which in this case is the strong version at doing 4 hits at random. So yep, there we go. He's going to be spreading out those poisons, allowing you to get that damage rolling, and then he has a little bit of an HP aura, which is nothing crazy. Then we have the Painkeeper here, enabling a lot of Demon Lord and killable and block damage builds. She's really mainly going to be useful over there, as well as Faction Wars, as you can see over here. I'm not really too sure about the spiders then, although she does bring a little bit of AoE damage as well as healing, and her main usefulness is going to be her A3, where she reduces the cooldown on all your allies' abilities, right? And it's going to be going down to a 4-turn cooldown once fully booked up, enabling other characters in your team to just be able to go back to their very useful buffs, as we already mentioned, the unkillable and the block damage kind of setups. Then she does have this AoE attack, which I already talked about, where she's gonna be doing quite some healing, 15% of his champion's max HP every time she does use it, and then she does have a double hit on the A1 with a little bit of turn meter filling, but it's really all just about these A3 and then the A2 for the healing. And then we gotta give it to Coldheart, probably one of the better rare champions there is out there. She's nuts in early bossing, especially of course Fire Knight and Spider's Den. Why Fire Knight and why Spider's Den? She does bring a 4-time hit, right? 4 times at random, meaning that if you're in the Fire Knight, there is 4 stacks of the shield gone. She also does apply a heal reduction, so there we go, no spider healing. I think he can actually get the debuff applied. Anyways, no healing for the Fire Knight, that is for sure. And then you also have an AoE attack here, which is going to also be placing poisons as well as healing reductions, which is a little bit of AoE for controlling the spiderlings. And the main usefulness for her is going to be her A3, a massive single target hit, which is also going to be decreasing the target's turn meter by 100% and having a higher chance of inflicting a critical hit. But the main thing about it is that the damage is going to be increasing according to the enemy's max HP. If you're going to be building this up with a little bit of attack over there and just as high as you can go on any dungeon stage, you're going to be destroying the spider simply with having 1 or even 2 Coldhearts in your team. It's definitely viable and definitely useful. We got to give a special mention to Renegade as well. She's a Void affinity champion from the Knights Revenant. Revenant. Very good reviews overall, but she's also mainly useful for the Phantom Shogun's Grove. She's going to be having a heal reduction as well as a little bit of damage over here on her A1, nothing too crazy. She's going to be also applying decreased speed on the low version as well as decreased accuracy, and then she has a main ability here on the A3, that's why she is really useful. She's going to be decreasing the cooldown of all ally skills by 2 turns, but not for herself, right? And then this is going to be making her receive damage equal to 30% of her max HP, which even if she actually gets killed through that, right? So it's quite a bombastic ability, but that cooldown reduction is massive. Even though it's on a 5-turn cooldown, it does enable quite some synergies, which you are going to be requiring for the Phantom Shogun Grove in particular, and then she does get a little bit of resistance, which is not too bad. For the Dwarves faction, I want to be mentioning particularly 2 guys. First of all, the Runic Tender, who's going to be bringing a lot of random AoE hits, or rather single target hits. We have a double hitter on the A1, which is going to be quite nice for the Fire Knight early on. He also brings another double hit over here, applying a decreased attack debuff, very necessary for things like, again, the Demon Lord. You're going to need access to these debuffs early on as soon as possible. And then you also have a reflect damage buff as well as a little bit of healing. That reflect damage can be great, particularly in the Demon Lord where there is so much AoE damage. That reflect damage is going to be straight converted into damage into the boss, right? So that's an easy way of scaling up the damage as well as providing a very, very necessary debuff that's going to be the decreased attack. And then I gotta give it to Dilgol, man. He does a little bit of everything. His reviews are overall just great everywhere. He doesn't really shine in particular anywhere, but he does have a decreased speed debuff over here on his A1, very solid. Double AoE attack applying a decreased accuracy debuff, not bad whatsoever, can scale up quite some decent damage on a 3-turn cooldown. And then it's going to be bringing a big version of decreased defense on a single target triple hit, which is going to be going to pretty high chance of applying this debuff, right? So you're bringing that decreased defense, very useful for many avenues. It doesn't really bring that much else to the table besides just damage. The decreased accuracy debuff is whatever, and the small version of decreased speed is not going to be that useful, but he's solid, in particular very useful, of course, for faction wars. And then finally, I gotta give it to Tree Shield Knot from the Sylvan Watchers, another Void Affinity champion, which is going to be shining particularly in the Fire Knight. Why is that? He brings a triple hit over here with a decreased attack debuff, so you're getting through those shields easily. You need access to these triple hitters as soon as possible to be able to really progress on the Fire Knight, so this champion in particular will really help you out in that regard. He does bring a little bit of healing as well as a increased defense buff, not too bad, weak version though, and he also brings a revive, right? Revive 2 random allies on a 5-turn cooldown, as well as giving them a little bit of a shield, right? So he also brings an ally speed for the faction creeps in particular, where he will for sure be good enough, but he really shines mainly for the faction wars, or rather the Fire Knight. If you've made it all the way up to the end of the video, I really encourage you to check out Aptoide. It's going to be allowing you to get yourself bonuses whenever buying anything in Raid Shadow Legends through Aptoide. Those bonuses can go from extra 10% of any amount of money you're spending in the game, all the way up to extra 35% of that much money. And the good thing about the bonuses is that you can then go ahead and use them to buy the things for you instead of actually using your real money. So you're just going to be able to save up in further purchases as you are buying things that you would otherwise be buying anyways in the game, right? You can find out how to set it up on your Android devices like a PC and BlueStacks emulator, or just your Android phone, very easily by following the link down there in the description. And if you go ahead and use my code, which is going to be somewhere up here in the screen, and input it into the Aptoide wallet, which again will be all explained about how to set it up down there in that link, then you're going to be able to get an even bigger bonus from the get-go, flat 5% bonus for literally ever. Just put it in there, and here in the wallet you will also be able to see your purchase history as well as how much bonus you currently have accumulated. So that's literally it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye. See you.